Hello, everybody. I am so glad that you were able to join us today, next govers, non-govers, and maybe future govers. What I'm going to talk to you about today is career development and your roadmap to success in civil service. So hello, my name is Samantha Blackwood. I've been an HR manager with the state of California for almost a decade now. And before that, I was an environmental scientist. And so the reason I got into HR is to share with all of you the tips, tricks, and little ins and outs of navigating civil service, because I felt like that is really important and not a lot of people understand it. In addition to being an HR manager, I am also the Director of Professional Development for NextGov. And without further ado, I will go ahead and get started. So a little bit of background behind me, I was an environmental scientist for some time, and I was working for UC Davis. And I tried really hard to get on with the state and did not understand why I was not getting an interview. My husband, who worked for the state, took one look at my application package and immediately knew it was wrong. What he said was, "Hey, you're not reachable." Reachable, what does that mean? It did not make sense to me. He goes, "Hey, you know that exam that you took to get on with the state? You were in a rank that is not reachable." And I said, "What do you mean? I took the exam, I passed. I'm applying for jobs. I don't understand. Why would they let me pass an exam but not be hired for jobs?" It made no sense to me. So fast forward now, here I am giving you all of the ins and outs of navigating career development in civil service. So the state hiring process is broken into 4 parts. This is very, very, very different from private sector. In state service, the first thing that you have to do is take an exam. You do this before you even start applying for jobs. The reason why is because the California State Constitution says that all hiring in the state must be based on merit. It's called the merit principle. This means that hiring for state service cannot be based on favoritism, cronyism, prior knowledge of a candidate, nepotism. It can only be based on your merit and fitness for that position. One of the ways that the state does this is by testing your knowledge, skills, and abilities for a classification with a competitive exam. They'll use that exam score to determine if you are a good candidate for a job or not. So the first thing that you need to do is seek out those exams and take those exams. All these states' exams can be found on jobs.ca.gov, but it's really hard to kind of figure out which exams should you take, what classifications are you eligible for. This is where you're going to use that keyword search function on jobs.ca.gov to type in things that are within your wheelhouse. It could be human resources, it could be hiring, it could be discipline, engineering, science. All of those keyword phrases are going to help you find exams that you could possibly qualify for. Now, after you take an exam and become reachable, so reachable means that you score within one of the top 3 ranks. Exam lists are broken down into multiple ranks. Some exam lists have ranks 1 through 3. Some have 1 through 6, some have 1 through 9, and some even have 1 through 12. If you're not in one of the top 3 ranks, you're not eligible for a job. Now, important caveat here, there are ways that state HR professionals can clear ranks. What I mean by this is if no candidates in ranks, say 1 and 2, apply for a position, we are able to clear, which means get rid of and pretend like it does not exist, ranks 1 and 2, and everybody in the ranks beneath that, ranks 3, 4, and 5, all move up and become the new ranks 1, 2, and 3. The reason I tell you this is because if you have scored in a rank that is lower than ranks 1, 2, or 3, do not let that deter you. Please always apply for any and every job that you are interested in. This is really important because depending on that recruitment and that candidate pool, you may end up being reachable. So do not count yourself out. Please, please, please apply for any and all jobs that you're interested in. After you've competed in that online or maybe in-person exams take a lot of different methods. Some are in person, some are Scantron, A, B, C, D. You're going to feel like you're back in school. Some are oral interviews that you actually compete in and you get scored on based on your verbal answers to questions. Some are training and experience evaluations where you rate yourself. You score yourself on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being a novice, 5 being an expert, and you actually get to rate yourself. Exams take all these different methods because the state has to figure out what's the best method to test people for this classification. So an exam can look like a lot of different things. You're going to have just a variety of exams coming at you from all sorts of different directions, doing all sorts of different modes and methodologies. So it's not always going to look the same. So it's important to adapt. If you take those T&E or training and experience evaluation exams where you get to rate yourself, do not fall into the same pitfall that I did. I rated myself so hard. I was so harsh on myself. It was the first state exam I had ever taken, and I was way too hard on myself. That's why I wasn't reachable when I took that environmental scientist exam. I was not giving myself full credit for the depth and breadth of experience and knowledge and training that I had. If you're evaluating yourself, do not be overly critical on yourself. You are doing yourself no favors, because when you take that exam, you will be stuck with that score for 6 months, 9 months, or 12 months, depending on what is listed on that exam announcement. So for 12 months, I was stuck with a score that I could not use to get hired on with the state. Because of that, I became an office technician and I stayed in HR ever since. The next phase of the state hiring process is applying for jobs. So after you've taken that competitive exam, it's time for you to start applying for those positions. All jobs are also posted on jobs.ca.gov. Apply for anything and everything that you are interested in. Also, be really careful when you read job advertisements because the requirements for each job are going to be different. Each department gets to figure out what it is that they're looking for and what things they're going to ask you for. Some job ads will ask you for a supplemental questionnaire where they're going to ask you, in addition to submitting your application, answer questions 1, 2, 3, and 4, and they'll give you prompts. Other job ads might say, in addition to your application, please also submit a resume or a statement of qualifications. And they'll include specific instructions on how to complete that statement of qualifications. So make sure you read that job ad carefully and you don't get disqualified just by leaving out important information. The next step in the hiring process is actually interviewing for jobs. So after you've applied for all of these positions, you're going to start getting called for competitive interviews. All interviews with the state are standardized and competitive. What that means, again, is that in the state hiring process, they cannot use favoritism, they cannot use cronyism, they cannot use nepotism or prior knowledge of a candidate. Every recruitment has to be fair and based on the merit principle, which means that they develop screening criteria and scoring criteria and interview questions ahead of the actual interview occurring. All candidates should be asked the same set of job-related questions in the same order and assessed using the same scoring criteria. The candidate who scores the highest in that process, in addition to reference checking and personnel file reviews, and maybe a written exercise, will get offered the job. Then you'll start your probationary period. So probation could be anywhere from 6 months, 9 months to 12 months. After you pass probation, you will achieve what is considered permanent civil service status. What does that status get you? That gets you mandatory reinstatement rights back to that position. So that's one of the benefits to passing that probation. So next, I'm going to do a kind of a hard pivot to career development opportunities. I'm going to talk about things that will develop your career in state service that is everything you can do outside of actually applying for a new job. There are so many things that you can do that's outside of actually applying for a new job. This screen, I really recommend that you either take a picture or a snippet, because this is going to be your cheat sheet here. When you feel stuck or you're not really sure what your next steps are, I would pick something off of this table here. I've divided it into formal opportunities and informal opportunities. So in the state, there's some formal things that you can do. Formal meaning it's established, it's an actual program. Maybe there's some paperwork or something that you need to do. And informal, meaning things that don't really occur inside civil service, but are things that you could absolutely pursue on your own. The first thing I want to talk about is a training and development assignment. Training and development assignments are, and again, I said these are things that you can do outside of actually applying for a new job, but this is a little bit different. Training and development assignments are things that you can do. You apply for a position that you don't meet the minimum qualifications for. Why would you do that? Because it's going to give you training and development in a new occupational area. For example, we have people at my department who are really solid analysts, but they want to transition to IT and they haven't taken any information technology courses. They can apply for those jobs and compete for those jobs on a training and development basis. What a training development assignment is it gives you all of the training and all of the development that you need to meet the minimum qualifications at the end of a 24-month limited term appointment. So you are in this position for 24 months and the department provides you everything you need to meet those minimum qualifications at the end of that 24 months. Then you get permanently appointed to that position without having to compete for it again. This allows you to switch occupational areas. You could go from, like I said, analytical to IT. You can go from staff services to safety and health. This allows you to switch occupational areas. You cannot T&D within your own promotional pathway. It is only to switch occupational areas. You can volunteer. I put a little asterisk next to this one because some departments will have formal volunteer programs and some will not, but you can always do unpaid volunteer work. I have done this for my department. I work for the Department of Water Resources, and every year we have an educational booth that we do at the state fair. So pre-COVID, you would see me every year out at the state fair talking to people about water-wise gardening and drought conditions and what they can do to contribute to water savings. This was completely volunteer, and I did it just as outreach, community engagement. Some departments may even have tuition programs. So if you want to do continued education, each department gets to decide their own budget. So this is something that you're going to want to check with your department on, but they will help you refund part of your tuition. For example, I have a staff member right now who's earning her law degree, and we are paying for a portion of that degree so that she can eventually go on and become an attorney for my department. So we're helping her with her continued education. There's also formal programs called upward mobility. These are tracks that people can take when they're in kind of like dead end classifications. So low paying classifications that don't have a clear track for upward mobility, you could get into an upward mobility program. What that does is it gives you alternate assignments to help you expand your skill sets so that you can go into what's called bridging classifications, or they'll help you study to take promotional exams so that you can get into a different career path or a different classification series so that you can move up in your career. We already talked a little bit about taking civil service exams. There's a lot of different types of exams. It gets a little confusing at times. There's open exams, which means anyone can take them. There's departmental promotional exams, which means it's only limited to employees within that department. There's service-wide, there's statewide, there's spot. Spot means it's specific to a certain location. But my rule of thumb is apply for anything and everything you're interested in and let an HR professional tell you that you don't meet the minimum qualifications or that you don't qualify. Do not ever rule yourself out. There's also just a wide variety of appointments. Appointments are what we call when you get actually appointed to a position. So all the different types of appointments that can help you specifically for career development that is different than actually getting a new job. There's limited term appointments. Those are things that are temporary in which you would have mandatory reinstatement rights back to your old position. I've taken many limited term appointments in my career just to expand my skill set. And you know what? They've always turned into permanent because we got budget money or because a permanent position came through or we got a position, we got BCP or something like that. So even if they didn't, what's the worst that could happen? I go back to my old job and I've expanded my skill set in all these other different ways. There's something called an out of class assignment. This is specific to if you are a rank and file employee, I would refer to your bargaining unit contract. If you are excluded, meaning you're supervisory or managerial, I would refer to California Code of Regulations. An out of class assignment is anytime you are performing duties that is outside the realm of your current classification to a higher classification more than 50% of the time. So more than 50% of the time, you are performing the full range of duties to a higher level classification. Out of class assignments happen for a lot of reasons. Sometimes a higher level position is vacant and they need somebody to temporarily fill that need until it gets refilled before they backfill. Sometimes there's project-based out of class assignments. I know I did out of class assignments when I was a manager one because they needed people to do HR modernization projects. And so I did those out of class assignments to a higher level classification because it was project driven or project based. There's also acting assignments. An acting assignment is when you are temporarily up to 60 working days appointed to a higher level classification. That is also driven by vacancies, project base, emergency need. I was on an acting assignment briefly when the Orville spillway collapsed because they needed someone to liaison with FEMA. And so they needed someone to be a logistics coordinator. And that was a temporary emergency need. And so I was on a temporary acting assignment. For out of class assignments and acting assignments, you do not have to apply for those. Your department determines that within your position, they're going to put you in one of those. How do you become eligible for them? You ask. You ask, is there an opportunity for me? Hey, I see this position is vacant. What is your plan to backfill? I volunteer to step in and help fill that need until it's backfilled. So out of class assignments and acting assignments are definitely something that you're going to want to be a part of. Within the state, there's also something called an individual development plan, and departments are required to do annual appraisals. So individual development plans, or IDPs, and annual appraisals are wonderful times for you to figure out what your planning and goals are going to be for the next year. It's a time for you to reflect on what you accomplished and where you're going. That's a time for you to sit down with your supervisor and say, this is where I want to be next year. It's time for you to figure out what training plan you're going to put in place. What classes are you going to attend? What formal training programs are you going to be a part of? Segueing into training, I'm going to rep one right now that I just happened to see a flyer for a couple years ago. And it was, and you're going to love this because the state loves their acronyms, Cal IPGCA stands for California Innovation Playbook for Government Change Agents. This is an intense 6-month training program that teaches you how to innovate on the fly. It's a wonderful program and segued me into NextGov. So finding these formal training programs, management development training with UC Davis or Sac State, innovation training programs. These are things that you have to seek out on your own and ask your department to send you to. But you are absolutely within your rights to ask for these training programs. Job rotations. Some departments have formal job rotation programs. I know we have several at my department where we will rotate branch managers around so that they get cross-trained in other areas. If your department does not have a formal job rotation program, it is absolutely okay to be asked to be cross-trained in a different area. And you may be able to do that through a mentorship or job shadowing program. Probation. Probation is a really good time for not only your department or your employer to test out you, but for you to figure out, is this position a really good fit for me? If you're feeling like it's not a good fit, don't fake it to make it. You deserve to be happy too and to be successful in your role. So there is something called a self-rejection on probation. I think a lot of people need to know that being rejected on probation is considered non-punitive, or in the state, it's considered non-disciplinary. It just means you're not a good fit for that job. If you self-reject on probation, what happens to you? Well, if you previously had passed probation in a position prior to that one, you would have mandatory reinstatement rights back to your old position. If you have never passed probation in the state before, you would go back out to, sounds rude, you would go back out to the street. So you would lose your state job. So it's really important that if you're looking at being rejected on probation or self-rejecting on probation, you figure out if you've got those mandatory reinstatement rights or not. If you're concerned and you're not sure if you have them, I would say check with your HR office. Reinstatement. That's a little bit about what I talked about. There's permissive reinstatement and mandatory reinstatement. Permissive means if you have worked one day on a job in a classification, you have permissive reinstatement rights. What does that mean? You never have to take that exam again. Once you have worked one day on a job in a classification, you have been cleared from that exam list and you never have to get on that exam list again. Mandatory reinstatement rights are a little different. That means you have a mandatory right to return to your previous position. So again, like I said, if you've passed probation in a classification, you will have mandatory reinstatement rights. If you have worked one day on a job, you will have permissive reinstatement rights. It's really important to know that you've got these rights as a civil servant. If you're working for the state, your job is considered your property. This is why it is so hard to take civil servants' jobs away from them. And performance management takes a long time and needs to be very well documented because they are taking something from you. And then I already talked about acting assignments. I'm going to switch over to informal things that you can do. And this is great in civil service or just in your personal life, that your department may or may not have a formal mentorship program. Mentorship is a wonderful thing to become a part of. You can even ask somebody that you admire, hey, will you become my mentor? This is what I did. My department does not have a formal mentorship program, but I have a mentor. It is someone that I respect their leadership style. I respect how they run their shop. And I ask them for advice and guidance. I check in with them maybe every month or every other month just to see how they're doing. They see how I'm doing, and they've given me some of the best advice I've ever received in my whole career. You can also ask to do job shadowing. This is something that I did many, many years ago, about 8 years ago. I was very passionate about data analytics, and I had not had very much experience in this arena. So I asked at the time, somebody who was doing our data analytics, can I job shadow you and find out how you do your job? They were more than happy to meet my request, and my supervisor felt like it was a really good idea because then if that person left, there would be somebody who'd be cross-trained in how to do those analytics. So job shadowing is something that you can do formally or informally, and it's just an ask. What's the worst that can happen? They'll tell you no. The best that can happen is that you will learn a new skill. You can also join a professional organization. There are tons of professional organizations out there. I would say just do a Google search. There's Women in Water, which is one that I've joined. There's NextGov. There's Cal IPGCA. I would say join these professional organizations, especially if it's something related to your occupational area, science, engineering. Also, career coaching. Now, I had the distinct pleasure of winning a scholarship through Cal IPGCA for a career coaching session. And I did this last year. And I will tell you, I got more out of 1 hour with a career coach than I did out of 10 years of performance evaluations with my supervisor. No offense against my supervisor, but in your performance evaluations with the state, your supervisor is looking at how well you're doing your job. Your career coach is looking at what are your skills and strengths and what is going to best align with those skills and strengths and how do we get you there. If you can't win a scholarship for career coaching, I would say, please seek it out on your own. Google career coaches. Now, I am going to rep somebody. Her name is Michelle Schmidt, and she is part of Cal IPGCA. She is a wonderful career coach and is certified in so many ways for facilitating. She's a certified facilitator. So it's important for you to have a career coach, though, that really vibes with you and gets you. They're not a counselor, they're not a therapist. They're definitely there to help you with your career goals, but it is somebody that you need to trust the advice that they're giving you. So please look into career coaching. Also, what I find a lot of people do not do is they do not follow up after interviews. If you have interviewed for a job and you did not get that job, I would encourage you absolutely 100% follow up with that panel. Follow up with that hiring supervisor. Figure out why you didn't get that job. What points did you miss during that standardized interview, and what could you have done to do better? I have found 9 times out of 10 that hiring supervisor will give you a little nugget of information that you had no idea about. One of the things, piece of advice that they gave me is that I was very good at giving broad examples, but I wasn't giving specific details and walking people through scenarios that I was presenting on. And so, I've taken that information and I've used it to my advantage. So please follow up with interview panels. There's also special assignments. Departments are doing projects all the time. One of the areas of the biggest heartburn for departments is assembling project teams. And this is because how do you assemble a project team? You just base it off of who you know. Well, who do we know that can do data analytics? Who do we know that's run logistics for emergency response? They're just basing it off of who they know. If you're not volunteering for assignments and volunteering for projects, you're not getting the knowledge and skills and abilities and expanding your skill set. So it's really important that you volunteer for special assignments and projects so that they think, oh, great, here's another person we can know that we can bring into the fold. And again, volunteering. It's all about putting yourself out there. Next, I just want to talk a little bit about application packages so you can land that interview. It's really important that you customize your application package. I'm going to share a little state hidden secret with you, which is actual screening criteria that hiring supervisors use when they review applications. So part of my job is to review applications. I review close to 10 to 12,000 applications a year. It is true, applications receive maybe a 40-second to 2-minute review, depending on what kind of position we're hiring for and the technical skills we need for that position. It is extremely important that you customize your application to whatever job it is you're applying for. If I'm hiring for an analyst, I'm looking for analytical buzzwords. I need to know that you've researched problems. I need to know that you've done completed staff work. I need to know that you've recommended solutions. I need to know that you've presented to management. So it's very important that you customize your application package to whatever job it is you're applying for. It's also really important that you complete it. It's really sad that oftentimes I see people get screened out of these processes because their application package is incomplete. They've left something out. The reason why hiring managers ask for all of these things, an application, a resume, a statement of qualification, these are all hurdles intended to weed down that candidate pool. Now the applicants can apply online. In 2008, Cal HR made it so that applicants can apply for jobs online. We get a lot of applications. And I would hate to miss out on a super qualified candidate just because they forgot to upload their resume or their statement of qualifications, or because on their cover letter, it has the wrong department name. Please, please, please customize and complete your application package. This on your screen now is what an actual application screening tool looks like. This is real. This is one that I use when I hire analysts. How do I decide who's going to be interviewed or not? Well, it has to be fair and it has to be merit-based. I can't use any favoritism, prior knowledge of a competitor, nothing like that. It all has to be job-related criteria to decide who it is that I'm going to interview for that position. So if I'm hiring an analyst, some things that I'm looking for is, do they have HR experience? Yes or no? Do they have analytical experience? Yes or no? Do they have customer service experience? Yes or no? All of these things are racking up points. Then I will set a cutoff, say 70% or 7 points out of 10 points possible. If you get a 7 or higher, you're going to get offered an interview. If you get 6 points or lower, you're not going to get an interview. This standard screening criteria is something that all supervisors in the state are required to use. This is what they use to decide who gets interviewed and who doesn't. It's all a points-based system. If you applied for a job and you did not get called for an interview, again, it does not hurt to call that hiring supervisor and say, what was missing from my application package? Where did I miss points? What was it you're looking for? So that you can tailor your application package better for the next opportunity. Hiring interviews, as I mentioned earlier, has to be standardized questions. You cannot ask different candidates different questions. You cannot do that. It violates the merit principle. It has to be job-related, standardized questions asked to all candidates in the same order. It also has to have standardized rating criteria. So even if you have your standard questions, all candidates have to be rated on the same criteria. Hiring supervisors have to decide that criteria ahead of time. They have to decide before interviews occur what criteria it is they're going to use. And that criteria has to be job related. I'm going to share another secret with you. It's an example, but I will share with you what actual screening criteria looks like. So this is just a fun example. What steps would you take to wash a dog? This is the standardized question that the hiring supervisor would have developed ahead of time. They would have decided that they're going to score this question on 1 to 5 points. They have preferred responses. The preferred responses are you water the dog, you shampoo the dog, you dry the dog. Standard response. So if I'm a candidate and I come in and I go, they ask me, what steps would you take to wash a dog? Well, I've been a dog groomer for 5 years and it's pretty straightforward. You get them wet, you get them nice and wet, get that water worked in their fur, then you shampoo them, get into a nice lather, you rinse off the lather, and then you dry them off. Okay, that compared to a candidate that says, what steps would you take to wash a dog? Well, I've been a dog groomer for 10 years. And the first thing you want to do is make that animal feel really comfortable for you. So I always have treats in my pocket so that they trust me. Then once I get them into the water, I make sure the water is not too hot, not too cold. It's just right. I get them all nice and wet. Then I pick out a shampoo that's perfect for their fur type. Maybe they have curly fur. Maybe they have straight fur. I work it into a nice lather. This is where I like to give all dogs a nice massage so that they think of this as a really nice, happy experience. And they're not traumatized at all when their owner comes and picks them up. Then I make sure to rinse all the shampoo out. Then I condition them. Not all dogs need conditioner. Short-haired dogs don't, but long-haired dogs might. Then I like to rinse all that conditioner out and dry them off. Some dogs do better with a towel dry. Some do better with a blow dry. And then I like to put a little spritz of Smell Goody spray on them and give them a bow or a treat so that they're all nice and pretty and cute when their owner comes and picks them up. Okay, both candidates answered the question, but how many points am I going to get? Here's your rating criteria on a scale of 1 to 5. Not qualified candidates fail to provide an acceptable response. They do not convey a level of expertise and experience for the position. Their answers are vague or incomplete. They do not provide details that are demonstrative of the requirements of the position. Qualified candidates get 2 to 3 points. Well, their understanding is a little bit better. Their response may be complete. Overall, they did address the question and they didn't require any probing. Well-qualified candidate. A well-qualified candidate really thought this question through. They demonstrated a thorough understanding of the question and they provided a lot of specific details. Candidate 1 would probably get 2 points. They answered the question and it was the bare minimum of what is required. Candidate 2 probably going to get 5 points. That is a difference of 3 points. And if you add that up to a 5, 6, 7 question interview, it's going to be really clear why the highest scoring candidate received maximum points possible versus somebody who just gets very nervous and just answers the basic minimum of the question. I like to follow a specific formula when I'm interviewing, and I like to recommend this to people as well. When you're asked an interview question, you should answer it. But what you should also do is answer the question, tie it back to your experience, and tie it back to the position that you're applying for. Provide relevant examples and be as detailed and as thorough as you can. If they give you an hour to interview, use that hour. Any information that you're leaving out are points that you were missing. The highest scoring candidate is the one that's going to get that job. Next, what you're going to see on your screen is reference checking. People also get points for reference checks. Not all reference checks are point-based, but some of them are. Reference checks are absolutely used in making hiring decisions. So when you're providing references, provide people who are going to give you good references. In addition, it's important to know that hiring supervisors are not limited to contacting just the references you provide. They have the ability to contact your previous supervisors, whether or not you listed them on your application. If you do not want your current supervisor to know that you are interviewing for jobs, let the hiring panel know that, okay? Or else they may actually do that. But for reference checks, it's important to know that sometimes these things are point-based. So I use a point-based reference checking method. On a scale of 1 to 10, tell me, how does this person's ability to meet deadlines, ability to prioritize, their analytical skills? And I absolutely incorporate that into their final score to determine who my final candidate is going to be. OPF review. What's an OPF? An OPF stands for official personnel file. If you are a state worker, you have an OPF. It is in your human resources office. You may not know that you have an OPF. Did you know you can put anything you want in your OPF? All you have to do is submit it to your human resources office. You can also review your OPF if you want. All you have to do is ask your HR office, hey, I'd like to schedule an appointment to review my OPF. What is in your OPF? Well, a lot of times it has boring forms like your health benefit forms or your application package. Sometimes it's got new hire docs. But what it also has is probation reports, any appraisal and developments that you've done, any corrective adverse action or merit salary denials that you've had, or any commendations that you've had. If you get kudos emails or thank you letters, submit those to your OPF. It also has your PIMS history. This is not something that a lot of people look at, but in the state controller's office, every state worker has an employment history and it's all coded, and every code means something. Everybody has a history. So every time you've had a range change, every time you've moved positions, every time you've switched from annual leave to sick leave, it is all captured in the state controller's office system. And hiring supervisors do look at that, and they do look at the codes to see if you have anything negative in there. They also look to see if you've received your merit salary adjustments timely. So if you are a state worker, you get an MSA or merit salary adjustment or 5% salary increase every year on the date until you are maxed out in your current classification. Hiring supervisors will check to see, did you receive those every year when you were supposed to? Because sometimes if people don't receive them, it means it got held back for something disciplinary. They'll also check your leave balances. I like to tell hiring supervisors, do not check leave balances. It does not mean that a person is good or bad at their job. There's always things that are outside people's control, but it is important to note that if you have very low leave balances, that may be something that you would want to address with a hiring supervisor, such as, oh, I have low leave balances because I XYZ. But you absolutely do not have to share that. And it should not be used to evaluate your fitness for a job. But hiring supervisors do have the ability to look at that. And they also have the ability sometimes to look at your training history to see what kinds of trainings and knowledge that you have. So we do have about 10 minutes left today, and I do want to leave some time for questions. Do we have any? So in closing, thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate your time. I hope you found some valuable tidbits to take with you for your career development in civil service. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. My name is Samantha Blackwood. You can find me on NextGov Slack channel, and I hope to hear from you soon. Thank you.